see so many of you here. As you probably noticed on the list, 50 names, and we always reckon that doing well if half the number that sign up to the list actually turn up. I understand there's quite a lot of people online, which is great. I'm very grateful to Akmal for volunteering to give us this talk tonight. There will be some sandwiches for those who turned up in person.
Fries are getting.
And in case anybody hasn't been to these premises before, if you hear an alarm, it's not a drill. Vacate the premises, you'll see the green signs. Toilets are this way to the right. And they don't, whoever designed the premises didn't think about affordances. So when the door says push, please push. Don't try and pull it, even though it looks as though it's to be pulled. There we are. Everybody's, I see many of you brought laptops. I've tried to set myself up an account on OpenAI, and I found that I had one last year and it's expired. And so the free usage is all gone. You can't sign up with a different name. Still got the same phone number. So I hope to pair with somebody when it comes to the exercise. Without further ado.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you all of you for attending today. And it's great because I've known him a long time. He actually helped me get a job at Logica years ago. That's a very long time. And very kindly, from time to time, he reaches out to me and asks, would I be interested in doing a presentation for the BCS? And I think it's been a couple of years, maybe 3-4 years now, I think. Last one.
Last year.
Yeah. Time just flies. And I was actually just looking at one of the announcements for the SPA group from over 20 years ago. And I actually found it online. And so this is a web page. I think, let me just find it. Here we are. Previous meetings. Okay, let's just have a look at this. Zoom in a bit and just show you this. So that is from, have a look, July 2001 presentation. And I used to work for Informix. And you can see a long time ago. Only one of those links works now. Download. It's a zip file, and surprisingly, it's still got my slide deck from that time, plus the PDF file which I shared. And I think there was a video as well, Babylon 5 or something, 4 or something like that. Babylon 4.
You and I both had more hair then.
We both had more hair, as you can see, a lot of hair. And so the reason I'm kind of drawing your attention to this is because in that zip file, there is a PDF file, which at that time, over 20 years ago, I mean, the hot technology of the day was object-oriented databases. And there was a gentleman called Neil Leavitt, based in the United States, who actually interviewed me for that article. And we are going to use his article today as well. So 20 years later, same article, things haven't really changed. So we're going to ask some questions. We're going to use ChatGPT to ask some questions of that article. And so there we go. And I remember many years ago, it was, before it was called the SPA group, it was the BCS Oops specialist group. Steve Cook, John Daniels, Legends, and those guys, we used to run events at IBM South Bank. And, many of those meetups used to be held there. And so, life and time moves on. So there we go. Okay, so before we go any further, I've got a few slides to show you, okay? But what I'd like you to do is to try and provision some resources for yourself, okay? That's going to help you, because you do it now, stuff will be ready by the time we're ready to start with the labs. So the thing to do is, by all means, grab the IPython notebooks and a copy of the PDF presentation slides, which David has shared in the chat. Okay, so if you look at the link, you see there are 6 IPython notebooks. We'll do our very best to get through them all. If not, let's try at least doing one of the meaty ones, okay? And the others you can very well do in your own time, okay? So they are stand independent. They don't need anything else to run. But there's a couple of gotchas I need to show you, which will help you, okay? So the best thing to do is if you go to portal.
Sorry, can you share this link?
Did you get the links?
It's in the Zoom chat. Oh, you
Zoom?
guys are not on Zoom. Good thinking. That is one of the issues. All right, let me try and see if it's going to be a bit of a problem because it's one of these things. That, okay, actually, I have it here. All right, now let me try and see what I can do to maximize this. If that's horrible. All right. Okay. I'll try and keep that there for a few minutes. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I thought that you would receive in advance an email to tell you here, go to this drive, download this content.
It's supposed to, yeah.
Okay, I think that was the game plan. So
Let's put it inside of Bitly.
if you could, that would be great, please. If someone has got Bitly access,
I need to get that first.
yes. I'll keep my finger there. So I'll keep talking for a few minutes then. Okay, so I mean, the goal here is that we want to try and give you some hands-on experience and to give you the opportunity to try some of this out for yourself. Hence the reason why I requested, please create a single store account and an OpenAI account. Hopefully you still have access to your OpenAI account. If you sign up, they'll ask you for a phone number. Okay, basically it's just to verify your identity. The link should have gone out in an email to you again. I think it's on the website as well. And you get $20 credit from OpenAI, which is not much, but actually all of the stuff that you would do today using OpenAI, believe it or not, the cost is $1 US. That's how much it would cost to run. There was when I originally signed up for my OpenAI account, being a newbie, I made the terrible mistake of trying to do everything, right? And within a day, I'd burned through my credits, all gone. And then, of course, I had to put my credit card number in because if I wanted more access, and then sometime later, I was fortunate in that my employer actually created a corporate account. And so that's wonderful because there's about a dozen of us that use it fairly regularly. And that's helpful because the company now picks up the tab and I monitor the usage, and it's surprising. It's like about $5, $6 a month. And we do a lot of stuff. So the cost of using it has really come down considerably. Now, the reason for using OpenAI LLM is because my personal view, I mean, you may disagree, but it's like the gold standard, okay? It's the Rolls Royce, the Ferrari, whatever, however you want to phrase it. It is the best quality out there at the moment, commercially. Llama 2, released by Facebook very recently. I think that's going to be a great open source kind of competitor. So if you're a fan of Hugging Face, and you use them a lot, that's going to be a great alternative for you. The other thing to remember is that especially if you're working with these kind of commercial entities, keep in mind that you are sending data from your environment to their environment. They do some evaluation, they send you a result back. And now if you talk to OpenAI, they will tell you they don't keep the results, okay? It's gone. But it's a question of, do you want stuff going outside the firewall? And you may feel that as an enterprise, if you are working in an environment, especially one that maybe has limited access to the internet, is not viable. And therefore, as I said before, there are alternatives. And with the recent release of Llama 2, I think we are getting to the point where you've got great alternatives. You can run them inside your organization behind the firewall, and you don't need to go anywhere. Okay, so they are possibilities. Today, we're not going to do anything sensitive. Neither are we sending anything sensitive to OpenAI for evaluation. So I think that should work out to be great. Okay. How are we doing for the Bitly?
We can access that. I cannot access it.
You cannot access that. Okay, all right, bear with me. Let me see. This thing should have global access. Okay, let me share.
The link.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
So if you send me an email, then I'll reply to it.
Okay, so anyone with the link can view it. You can see that you can see here, okay, and you are viewers. So you should be able to access that.
Okay, I did a tiny URL,
Yeah.
so tinyurl.com/AI-demo-100
Okay, let me take a look at that. So tiny, okay, thank you. URL.com
.com/AI.
AI
Oh, sorry, /AI
backslash
yeah, AI-demo
demo
100.
-100. Okay, let's just copy this, okay, for a moment and see if that works.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And you're great at reading stuff, so you must have been quite painful process, but brilliant. Thank you very much. So if we just post this here as well into, oh, you've done that already, have you, David? Or we could do this.
The Zoom one's okay.
Okay, the Zoom one's okay. So everyone's on the Zoom people are all right. It's just you guys here causing trouble.
Okay, so I didn't catch all of that URL stuff.
All right.
Put it up there again?
Yes, you know, it's this thing here. I tell you what, let me do this, okay?
Yeah.
And if I just hover on this, it should be possible to just have a look. Wait a minute.
Got it.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes this thing works, sometimes it doesn't. Let me.
Brilliant, thank you.
There we are. Quite helpful. URL.com/AI-demo-100. Thank you very much. That's very, very useful. One of the things about doing presentations, I always learn something. You know, someone has always got something useful to tell me, and it's a two-way thing, right? I'm not here just to present to you. I've learned something today. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Okay, so there we are. That is something we'll take care of a little bit later on. All right, now. So the next thing we need to do, okay, so if you go to portal.singlestore, all one word.com, okay, just again, try and see if we can get this. And I mean, it will complain. Wait, let me, I'm using this, let me just open incognito window, okay, and just try and do it there. Oh, it still remembers it. I was trying. There we are. Okay, so portal.singlestore.com. And if you just go there, hopefully you've all signed up already. If not, you can do so. Literally, it's less than a minute. Okay, just ask you for an email and password that you create. And I think it just sends you a message to verify that, yes, you are human. And once you've done that, essentially, you will be able to log in and you'll see an environment that looks very much like this. Okay, you make this.
Signed up. It's now asking me, do you want to launch in the cloud or manual?
That's interesting. Cloud, I would say. Let me have a look at that. See why it's showing you. They may have changed the portal. Hopefully, I'm seeing this.
So this is after establish my account. This is where it went to.
Interesting. Okay, launch in the cloud. Launch in the cloud, okay? We will keep nothing to download or install, just everything is browser based.
What do you want to achieve? Explore the product, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Just pick some reason, or if you can skip it, it should be okay.
You work with a particular data source. I'll say not.
Sorry about that. All right. And that, it looks like they've got a bit more verbose than the last time I visited. Again, great. I learned something today. I can feed this back. Make it easy for people to sign up. Don't ask them questions. Okay, so once you're in the environment, again, let me just try and make this bigger and zoom in a bit here. Okay, look something like this. Okay, so you've got essentially a browser-based environment, and on the left-hand side is kind of a left nav here, a whole bunch of things, links, connections that you have, and you've got other things there in the middle as well, fairly clear sort of workspace. Let me just switch this back to actual size just for a moment, okay, and I can show you what we've got here, okay? And so what you want to do is, if you look on the left-hand side, presumably you're all managed to get in okay. And you see there's a thing there that says group. Okay. Thing here. If you click on that, and it will come up with this and say, create workspace group.
Yep.
I've already done this, okay? So just keep the default names easy, all right? So it will probably say group 1 or something like that, that's fine. And for the cloud provider, use AWS, that's fine too. Now, I've got a couple of other options here, which you may not see, but for your region, please try US East 1, North Virginia, okay? The reason for that is because the notebook environment we're going to use is currently in preview. And so for the best performance, if you run both the notebook environment and your workspace environment co-located, you'll get fast connections, fast response. You could use it elsewhere. As you can see, you have a choice of quite a lot. So Europe, West 1, Ireland, for example. There is a London one there as well, I think. Let me have a look in the list. Europe, West 2, for example, London. They will work too, okay? In one of the notebooks, the performance will be a bit slower though, okay? 30 seconds versus 8 minutes, okay, for a particular database load. I mean, that's the difference, all right? So if you can, try and use the US East 1, North Virginia, okay, as the region. And then just at the bottom there, if you just click the next button, okay, and on here, again, you don't need to do anything. My suggestion is just take the default workspace details, leave the size as S00. Here you can see, okay, so this is the smallest size. That's absolutely fine. You don't need anything bigger currently. If you so happen that you wanted something larger, you can have a look at the list here. If you click on edit, and you can see this goes all the way up to, what is it? S384, which is over 3,000 virtual CPUs, 24 terabytes of RAM, and obviously costs a lot more in terms of credits. So,
Turn off the single store quite preview.
I think leave both of those disabled, so both the Kai preview and the sample data set, my recommendation, just leave them grayed out. Okay, you don't need them today. Okay, maybe another time. Okay. And then just say create workspace, and it will just provision that for you. It takes a couple of minutes, okay? So as I said before, I wanted to get you to do this because it does take a few minutes in order to complete this. So meantime, let me just go back here. And so once it's ready, you'll see something like this. Okay.
Not acquire lock.
Right. And it will have a nice kind of green check mark to show you that it's ready. Okay. And currently you'll see that if you follow to the right-hand side, there are no databases, okay? It just says create database, which we will do through the notebooks themselves, okay? That's the main thing. At this point, my suggestion would be, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, can you see there is this kind of, this thing here. Just try and get this, okay? Just get this here. And if you click on this, there is a tutorial. I mean, there's a bunch of sample data sets available, but the one that we would like to use, hopefully we'll get around to it a little bit later on, is this TPCH, load data, okay? So just scroll down inside that window a little bit so you can see that one option there is that it says load TPCH dataset. Just click on that, like so, and it takes, I mean, it says here it will take about 2 minutes or so. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. That's about 10 gigabytes of data. Leave that running, okay? It's all right. No worries about that. Again, we can come back to that later. The key thing is that you'll see that it's given you a database name here, all right? So copy and paste that somewhere, if you can, all right? Just like this, for example, I would copy this and just...
I'm sorry, what do we do if we can't find that little icon? I clicked on the question mark and it gave me some tutorials.
Should be, if you go to just tutorials, this, are you seeing something like this, Imo? Are you seeing that?
Yes.
All right, just scroll down and you see there's an option that says load data or try with sample data. So if you try with sample data, if you scroll down, you'll see that benchmark data set TPCH is in there. Okay, it's in the list, and just select that from there.
One person is it's asking for credit card details. Is that normal?
Do not enter any credit card details. You should not be asked for that, and you don't need it. What's that for? Single store or for OpenAI, David?
I'm not sure. Single store, I guess. But
Single store will give you $600 of credits. That should be fine. Okay.
and the last one should be
All right. Anyone need help? Are you guys good?
Still on. Taking its time, yeah. So once that's loaded up, I'm assuming that will be.
It's still creating. All right, still provisioning. That's fine. So we're going to be hitting the infrastructure a little bit today. Don't worry. Once it's up and running, it'll be okay. This is why I wanted you to get it done now, so we can go to the slides, come back, and it should be done. All right. As you can see, I did mine a little bit earlier. I prepared for this slightly in advance, but that's all we need to do. Okay. And again, you'll see that once it's provisioned, there's a whole bunch of options along the top navigation pane here. Can you see it's overview, workspaces, databases, access, firewall, so on. By default, there is a firewall there which keeps the bad guys out. It protects your environment. You can set it, okay, but we need to wait for things to come up first before we start messing around with it. If you say edit, for example, allow access from anywhere. Bit dangerous, but since we've got nothing sensitive to work with, it should be all right. And again, we'll come back to this a little bit later. So that's the main thing, okay? Just get your workspace up and running. Make sure that TPCH data set is being loaded. And even if it's not completed in terms of provisioning, don't worry about it, okay? It will take a little bit of time, but it'll get there eventually. Okay, great. David, I see we've got some questions in the chat there. Anything that needs my attention?
No, so we are going to have the video available on YouTube. So if you lose track of all the steps, then you will be able to go through it later on.
Right, awesome. Okay, all right, guys. So anyone need help? Is everyone good? You're kind of getting there.
Yeah, we're going with the queries one by one when provisional is done, and then pointer.
Yes, so what we'll do is I'll show you how to load the IPython notebooks, okay, and the environment that we're going to use. And so, as I said, it does take a couple of minutes to kind of get there, and that's the main thing I wanted to get done for you. All right, so let's have a look at this then. Okay, so like I said, got a few slides to show you, not too many. Okay. All right, so I'm sure most of you have used GPT to some degree, or maybe Bard as well from Google. And so this thing kind of hit us very fast, late last year. And then early this year, I heard about it, and I kind of ignored it. I thought it's another one of these things. It's just going to fad. It's going to go away, all right? And then it didn't go away. And then I thought, well, let me have a look. Let's see all the fuss is about. So I started using it a little bit, and I got hooked, okay? Because there's some stuff I wanted to do, and I asked it, and it came back and gave me some good answers. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. And then I asked it some more stuff, and it gave me some bad answers. And this concept of hallucination, basically it makes stuff up, right? Because its knowledge base is so vast, it picks these points and kind of tries to infer and join the dots, as it were, and it makes mistakes. So earlier this year, I was trying to find information about how would I use ChatGPT for fraud detection, for example. Would it be a good solution in say, a banking environment to assist me to be able to determine this? And because it's much more based around text and semantics rather than actual kind of numerical values, of course, I tried it out. That's where I burned up my $20 very quickly, and it didn't work very well. But if I go and revisit it now, I'm sure I do a better job. The thing is, as part of my research, I asked it some questions, give me some references to fraud detection and how it can be. So it gave me a whole list of hyperlinks, names that look very, these like academic type professorial type names. And every link that I clicked on out of the 6 or 7 it gave me got nowhere, 404 error, right? So hallucinations, so it kind of makes things up. So, and the thing is, OpenAI and Google are the same as well with Bard. They do warn you that it may not necessarily give you good answers, right? Right? Beware and forewarn. That's okay. But I think that the benefit that it's providing is, going to be really good. Okay, so that's me when I used to have hair. So in terms of agenda, then it's fairly simple. And my slides don't cover too much. The PDF is in the Google Drive as well, so you're welcome to review that at your leisure a little bit later on. But I would like to cover a few things. And there was a time when I used to work on these books, and years ago, when you remember the OOPS specialist group, I actually did a talk about object-oriented databases. That was the hot technology of the day. Please don't buy any of these, okay? They're obsolete. And, they are, stuff comes and goes. Recently, I was invited to do a podcast, and my kind of observation was this on the state of technology today was, I wouldn't publish a book now. In the past, it took 2 years to do. Today, you can't wait 2 weeks, okay? People want stuff now, right? We do a lot of these webinars at SingleStore almost on a weekly basis now. We roll out, just this week, we've done 2 already. And the level of interest, certainly around this whole Gen AI thing, is just absolutely phenomenal. And people, at one time, they were content just to receive a copy of the video recording. Now they want the slides, they want your GitHub repo, they want the scripts, they want the shirt off your back. Literally everything that they can get because they are hungry for knowledge. They want everything, all right? They really want to learn, which is great. So, and there was, as I said, the link to the previous. I maintained the hyperlink to the download simply because it still works. Okay, and we're going to use that article a little bit later on. All right, so just 2 slides about SingleStoreDB. So what it is a distributed relational database system. Right, that's the key thing. And over the last 10 years or so, you've seen the emergence of a number of these products. So there was a time when everything was monolithic, okay? You want to get more processing power, buy a bigger box. That was the nature of life. And then when Hadoop came along and Spark came along, and these kind of changed the world in terms of you can take off-the-shelf hardware, build your cluster. Now you can run stuff that's open source and awesome and really works well, and it distributes the processing, all right? Divide and conquer. Use the processing power of your cluster to do bits and then get your answers from each part. And so this is the nature of a database system. So SQL still has a lot of life in it, and that is one of the directions that we are going in now. Okay, so as far as the product is concerned, well, this 30,000-foot view runs on multiple platforms. It's multi-model, as they say, and I've done stuff in the past covering things like geospatial, JSON, time series, and so on. And let's have a look. There we go. Real-time analytics and applications. So the only sort of bit of marketing there, if I could just add that, and that's about all I will say, is this notion of universal storage that you see in the bottom there. And then for the colleagues that are joining us on Zoom, let me just highlight this thing, okay? So essentially what the product does, it can handle both OLAP and OLTP through a single storage type. And it separates storage and compute as well. So there are other companies that do that too as well. And that is kind of an interesting concept. So get rid of this. And that's really all I'll say on that. And if you're interested, just speak to me afterwards. Let's get into a bit more of the meat of the presentation. So lots of ways that you could work with machine learning, and this is not an exhaustive list, but stuff that I've worked with in the past, for example, Apache Spark, MLib, awesome machine learning library, and scales up and does a really good job. I'm sure many of you have used things like scikit-learn or used some of the machine learning stuff that's available in Python. It's very well supported, extremely popular programming language today. And other things that have come to the fore in recent times, there is this effort from a number of organizations. You can see it on the Bytecode Alliance, for example, this using WebAssembly, which traditionally, historically, might be just browser-based. but now you can get stuff that runs in the browser. So you can have your Postgres database running entirely in the browser, okay, something like that. Or you can extend the capabilities of a relational system to do much more, essentially beyond the capabilities that are of the built-in types, if you like. And this was something that years ago, when I worked for Infomix, for example, I was very privileged that I worked for Mike Stonebreaker. Mike was my boss. Mike is the guy who invented Postgres, Ingress, Vertica, SciDB, VaultDB, Tamer, you know, loads and loads of different technologies. And Mike was a great proponent of this kind of extensibility, you know, these data blades, as they used to call them. Other vendors had cartridges and things like that. You know, I think it was Oracle. But vectors has become quite a popular topic simply because of the growth in Gen AI over the last 6 to 8 months. People are interested. And then using a database system is really helpful, because if you think about it, what does a database system give you? It gives you long-term memory. It stores stuff. It manages that for you. It remembers that for you beyond the process or the program that created it. And you can reuse that in the future. And we'll see some examples of that today where we were able to store things and we can go back and look at those again. So that's why it's important. Okay, so this is, like I said, a bit of a take on a famous image that's available. So as I said before, these, you know, the AI kind of tends to infer things and draws some wrong conclusions. But like I said, you know, these companies make it absolutely clear that that's going to happen. You know, beware. It's Feynman Calerame or something as quickly as possible. You know, beware of this. Okay, so. In terms of vector search, then, you know, this is an entire topic by itself. I don't want to, there's no math here, by the way, don't worry. But it's this idea that we have a bunch of data, okay? And you can see this in one of the notebooks that we'll talk about. And then we're kind of interested in finding out, you know, what is close to that. And semantically, we could, there's a couple of sentences that are coming up in the forthcoming slide that shows the relevance of that. These tend to be used for querying. They are mathematical kind of representations of something, okay? We will see that very shortly, in numerical sort of value associated with that, because machines don't understand English, right? Or not very well. But they can work really well with numbers. And so often in the literature, you may come across this kind of k-nearest neighbor. I'm sure many of you have used this, you know, if you work with scikit-learn or any machine learning packages, some things you've even utilized in some of the work that you do. For this type of problem, if you think about it, you know, for small dimensions, it's kind of easy for us to get our head around it. So we can envision things in like 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions at most. When you start to talk about higher dimensions, it's a real problem for us to kind of visualize that. Again, for the software, for the machine, it's easy. It's an easy job, okay? But even there, it becomes a little bit difficult to manage once you start thinking about lots of features that you want to compare, and that becomes a problem even for the software. So the popularity of k-nearest neighbor, the approximate version, A and N, okay, again, you'll see that mentioned in the literature, particularly around vectors and vector search and vector databases today. So we'll look at a little bit on that later on. In terms of where we might use this, then there's a whole range of possibilities, recommendation systems, DNA sequencing. One of my favorites, they're plagiarism detection. And even, you know, that OpenAI had a tool recently, which they've taken offline now, which was how to detect if something has been generated by an AI. I actually tried it out. I tried it out with something I wrote, and it says not generated by a machine. It's human. All right, which is great. I have great confidence in the fact that I wrote it. Yeah, it's, you know, thanks for telling me that. So it's great. But semantic search, I think, is the biggest use case of this, and this is where it really comes into its fore. And it's useful because no longer do we just focus on text anymore, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we'd like to do. You know, yes, you know, the movie reviews or the restaurant reviews, we're interested in that, you know, looking for the negative reviews and the positive reviews, but things like image search, audio search, and being able to detect interesting things like, you know, find the burglar in the video, for example. All of this requires some modeling and some representation, and that's what we can achieve. So particularly then, like I said, the machine is not very good at understanding the English. So if you look at the top there, it says the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. There is a kind of a numerical representation of that we can get, these so-called embeddings as they're known as, or vectors, okay? So if we just draw our attention to this, okay, there we go. And if we look on the side, okay, so this might be how it is represented numerically, that particular sentence. There is a value associated with that. And then similarly, if we take a look at something else, then there's an actual image here. Literally the fox jumping over the lazy dog. And again, we see that there is a representation of that, okay, over this side. And if you compare these two sets of numbers, okay, you can see that there is quite a strong similarity between these. I mean, these are just made up, okay? But the goal is to show you that there is some kind of relationship between these. They are close to each other. Remember the KNN example? You're looking for things that are kind of close to each other. And then look at the last example there. I think that's meant to be some kind of speech or sound wave or something at the bottom there. And you can see there that maybe that is semantically quite far from the other two. And again, we'll see an example of that very shortly. Okay. And then from the previous diagram, you saw that we talked about KNN, ANN. I mean, how to figure out what is the distance between these representations? How do we determine whether things are close together or far apart? And there are many different ways that we can measure this. Some of the more popular ones like dot product, for example, cosine similarity, Euclidean distance, for example. We'll use Euclidean distance and dot product today, and others, okay? So these are good ways that can help us take those kind of numerical representations and be able to determine, are things close apart or are they further apart? How much of that, in terms of the semantic meaning. Vector databases, it's helps us in terms of the persistence, the long-term memory, if you like. This is what gives us. So if you look at ChatGPT, and Bard is the same, you can strike up a conversation with it. You can ask it a bunch of questions, and you'll see that as long as you keep the conversation going, you don't clear it from the left-hand side, for example, you don't delete it, it remembers. So it knows what you previously asked. You might refine the query, and it gives you an answer. And then you might say, well, okay, have a look at this or have a look at that. And it kind of understands the context because it's got all of the previous parts of the conversation that it can draw upon to know what you're actually talking about. At some point in time, you may close your browser, for example, or you may delete the chat history. It's gone. So this is particularly where a database management system comes in. Again, the ability to really work over large quantities of data, keep these semantic representations for the long term, and avoid you having to do these things over and over again. There's a whole bunch of these. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, okay? So there's lots of these products that are emerging on the market. And again, I think Emo will remember years ago, as I said before, I was very privileged when OODBs were the hot technology. I came to talk for the BCS Oops group. Well, in the intervening 20+ years, it was later it was XML. That was the next big thing. Okay, that was going to take over the world. Never happened. 10 years after that was NoSQL. That was going to take over the world. Well, maybe a little bit. Okay, but they still haven't conquered the relational world. And today, of course, it's vectors and vector databases. That is the next big wave that we're seeing. And pretty much every single database company out there has got some support for vectors today, because no one wants to get left behind. So you look at all of the big vendors, they are adding these capabilities to some degree or other. On the other hand, you might not need a database management system. Your problem might be small enough that you say, well, okay, just take one of these libraries, of which there are a whole bunch out there, and these might be perfectly defined for the particular problem that you're trying to solve. But keep in mind that they don't support things like CRUD, create, read, update, delete. They are not designed as database management systems. They do not have SQL support. You might think that's a good thing, okay? You might think that's a bad thing. It really depends on your problem. And then in terms of scalability and some other issues as well. That's fine too, okay? I'm not trying to knock them. It's simply that this may be more suitable for your particular business problem. Absolutely fine. Okay, all right, now let's get on to the hands-on labs. Okay, so what we're going to do, and we are going to work through, and typically the kind of workflow that we're going to use is going to look something like this. So often we're going to split some source material that we're going to get from somewhere. Either it's provided for us, ready packaged, or we are going to do it ourselves. We are going to get some vector embeddings from that. Essentially, we're going to use OpenAI today, okay? But you could use another LLM if you want to as well. If you want to go the open source route, Hugging Face is a great place to go. Yes, Imo.
LLM stands for
Large language model. Okay. So, sorry about that. It's nothing to do with law, by the way. I see lots of people with the title LLM, you know, they are in the law field. It's a little bit confusing because I found lots of people who seem to have graduated in law are searching my LinkedIn profile just because I'm posting about LLM. You know, it's an overloading of the term. So there is going to be some numerical representation of some text or some passages or something that we are going to do. We are going then, in terms of the query that we want to ask, well, we need to get the embeddings for those as well. So the machine kind of understands, you know, has something that it can use to compare. And then we're going to do this kind of K nearest neighbor type search, you know, find me the best answer, whatever is close enough to match what I am searching for. And this is what, you know, the power again of the database system. We can really help you in this context. Okay. And then typically in terms of that process of getting these vectors, okay, these array of these, you know, numerical values, typically then we'll go through this kind of three-step process. Call embeddings API to convert to vectors. So we're going to use OpenAI to do that for us. And then the second step, at the moment, we are pretty much ignoring that. We're not really looking at that, but this is going to become important. Indexing, okay? That could be very effective. There are a number of these techniques that are available out there. HNSW, I think. Google it. So, or something like an inverted file, for example. But that's not, you know, that helps in terms of search, but not necessarily in terms of the vectors. And then, of course, you're using these techniques. Remember, you looked about measuring the distance, so cosine or KNN or something else, in terms of being able to get something back that helps us in terms of understanding what we are getting back. And then what we're going to do today as well is we are going to build something like this, okay? One of the examples we'll look at is using this thing called LineChain, very, very popular framework. It was developed by Harrison Chase late last year. He was working on it for a specific problem, but I mean, it just took off. It's awesome. It has got readers and connectors for all sorts of data types. And literally, I mean, the chain is you can chain together these kind of modules, if you like, to achieve some goal that you want to achieve. And you can do so, you know, using the vectors. And again, it's got integrations with a whole bunch of technologies out there, which again, from your perspective as a developer, saves you a lot of time, money, and headache, because now the framework gives you the ability and the means to be able to achieve something without having to worry about the low-level detail. Again, we'll see an example of this in action, okay? So what we'll do is we will take a PDF document. Remember I mentioned right at the beginning, the Neil Leavitt's 20-year plus old PDF file that's still in that zip archive. So we'll take a PDF file, we'll chunk it up, okay? So we'll divide it, we'll read it in, and then we'll break it down into smaller parts, store those in the database system. We will then ask OpenAI to give us these embeddings, representations of those chunks. We will store these embeddings as well, okay, inside the database system. That gives us the kind of, you know, the representation that if we want then to be able to ask some query of the system, we can do that because it allows us to use the, you know, the representation. The machine understands that, you know, much better. And then we'll be able to then pose a question to the database system as a user. Okay, so we can then say, oh, all right, I am interested in such and such and such. We can express that in English. Okay, that is converted into an embedding as well. It finds us the match documents, and then we can use that as input to ChatGPT, for example, and then ask it to summarize or assess or give us some feedback or something like that from that document. Then again, very useful. So this mechanism utilizes a PDF reader that is built into LineChain, and there is some sort of very practical benefits to this as well, in the sense that recently there was a gentleman I was speaking to, and he said, look, we store lots of these tax documents for our customers, and they are typically PDF, but we use OCR in order to capture this information. Sometimes there are errors in terms of that capture process. Could something like LineChain help us be able to read those documents in, store them, have these kind of mathematical representations of them, these embeddings, and then we can ask questions of it to look for particular anomalous behavior or things that don't quite look right. Let the software and the database system do the hard work for you and be able to retrieve the information. And then there is some human element to that, obviously, to be able to check that yes, this is something that really needs attention, or no, it's something that is just been like a wild card or something like that. Okay, so we'll do that. All right, so let's now switch back to our environment. Hopefully your workspace has all been provisioned. You've got a nice green checkbox next to it. So should look something like this. Okay, so look at the bottom. Okay, you can see that. All good? Brilliant, that's great. And if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that there should be a database as well. So that TPCH database, you can see, should be available as well now. Okay, as something that's connected and has read-write privileges here, as you can see. I mean, we're only going to read it, but that's fine.
Just said my database is not created.
It's not mine either.
No, try again, okay? Just if you just launch from here, go back.
Oh, okay.
And then try and see if you can. So if you're seeing this, something like tutorials, okay? Just try with sample data. And then you've got the option of several MarTech, stock trades, AdTech, and this TPCH, okay? And then what you need to do is basically just look for this thing which says load data set, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, and you have to actually click that little triangle to load it.
That's it, okay? All right, great. So if you're able to download all of the Python notebooks, the next thing to do then is, if you look in the left-hand navigation pane, okay, so let me just zoom in a little bit here. And you see that you have, scroll down a bit, and you'll see in the left nav, it says here, let me just get my arrow over here, it says notebooks, and next to it says preview. Yeah. You would see that. Okay, so just under there, you'll see it's probably got personal and shared. Okay, so again, you can just toggle, and you'll see that I've already preloaded these. David, is there any issue?
Yeah, somebody said they can't see the database tutorials section.
Okay, I think it's this thing here. Probably this link here, yeah? Let me just try.
I still can't create this database.
Okay, don't worry, guys. If you can't, it's not essential, okay? So the TPCH was just something extra, okay? If it's not creating it for you, don't worry. Not a big deal, okay? We'll do the other stuff, okay? So we'll do the meaty stuff, and that was kind of a bit of an add-on. I can walk through that with you, okay? Otherwise, I think we'll be sitting here. we will never make any progress, all right? Don't worry, not a big deal. Okay, I can help you about this later on. All right. So the main thing is just the workspace itself. As long as that's up and running, that's the key thing. All right. And then if you click on the left nav, remember, we just pointing to this thing here, the notebooks. Okay. Literally, if you click notebooks, Now, in your case, you won't have anything that's displaying there, okay, at the moment, unless you've been using this environment already. But look in the top right-hand corner here where it says new notebook. Can you see that in purple with white writing? Yeah. There is a pull down there. If you select that, you'll see there are two options. One says new notebook, the other says import from file. The import from file is the option you want, okay? So once you select import from file, basically just drag one and all of the IPython notebooks. Do it one at a time, okay? I think that it will feel happier if you do it like that. You can browse for it, or you just literally grab it and drop it onto the box there. And then it gives you the opportunity of where you want to store it. You want to store it in your kind of personal area, or do you want to store it in a shared area? It really doesn't matter. I mean, the shared area is something you would then give the link to that to colleagues. They will be able to see that as well. If you want to just keep it private to yourself, just select personal, okay? And so, like I said, it's unlikely we're going to have time to cover all 6 of the notebooks together, but let's do a couple of them, okay? And then I can walk through the others and show you quickly. You can do that in your own time. You've created your account. Just to tell you, yeah, I mean, $600 of credits on SingleStore, and that is, well, I've been with the company 2 years and I still have credits today. So when I joined, I created a free account as well. And it's, I've been burning through those credits because I build demos and things like that. 600 is still good enough for me. Okay. So once you've loaded the notebooks, you might need to just refresh the browser, okay, so that it can see them in the left nav here. Can you see, look, here are mine. Over here, yeah. This is my kind of list. All right, you can see that I've got all 6 of them loaded up and ready. Okay, so I'm simply going to select the first one here, which is the ANN, the K nearest neighbor, just to kind of reinforce what we talked a little bit about earlier. So give that a moment or so to launch. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it's coming up. So you'll find that once it loads up, these are just Jupyter notebooks, okay? So this environment is giving you the opportunity to run these. You should be able to run these outside as well. So you don't have to use SingleStore's environment. Obviously, it makes a little bit more sense here where you are accessing some specific SingleStore resources and a database system. That is much more sensible to use this. But in this particular first notebook, we are doing no database access. It's not using anything specific to SingleStore. We are just running some standard Python. And so if I just walk through this with you, okay, so if you want to try and run this, I mean, just at the top there where it says kernel, you can just say restart kernel and clear all output. Okay, so this has been pre-run for you. So if you're just happy to walk through and just see it now, that's fine. If you want to actually run it as you go along, that's fine too. You can do that. So we just installed some libraries there. The Iris dataset, very famous in machine learning and data science, very, very tiny, 150 rows, 3 species of flowers, Setosa, Verticula, Virginica. And you have one of those species which is very distinct in the sense that you've got measurement about its petal and its sepal. Then you have some, the other 2, there is a kind of a slightly more, in terms of similarity. So sometimes it's great in machine learning because when you're building a model to predict, okay, you put in some parameters and say, okay, tell me what type of flower this is, it might get it wrong. Okay, and usually it's those 2 that it gets wrong. And if we take a look at this, you can see here that we've loaded in just sort of 5 rows here just to give you a sense of what's being stored. So it's got some information about the species, it's got the petal, sepal, okay, measured in centimeters. And then we're simply plotting it down here. This is kind of a nice graph. It shows us this K equals 1. So it's simply determining based upon 2 parameters, okay? The width and the length, okay? So here it's kind of 2-dimensional. So imagine if we were trying to model all 4 dimensions, okay, 4 sort of parameters, that'd be much more hard for us to visualize. This is fine. So here you can see that definitely one of these is very distinct, the iris setosa, okay, whereas the other 2, bit of an overlap there. This is why it's kind of an interesting in terms of prediction, modeling, and then you're trying to see how accurate the model is because sometimes it gets it wrong. So it kind of confuses one for the other. So that's a very useful way to be able to find, you know, what are the kind of, here we've got the k equals 1, what are the distances between them? And then this kind of boundary that you can see, which is the where the color kind of changes. So if it sits on one side, it's likely to be this. So if, for example, I add some new data that I might have, and then I want to make a prediction, if I find that, you know, the other particular flowers close by happen to be of one type, then the chances are it's of that type. Okay, but sometimes we want to do something more, and then here you can see it's slightly different, where we're now looking at the 3 nearest neighbors. You can see, and if you compare and contrast this with the previous one, it's a little bit different here. Still, one of them is very distinct, as you can see, but there's a somewhat less, you know, in terms of the boundaries there you can see between the other 2. So figuring out this distance between these is a very useful kind of feature. And as I said, within a lot of this kind of vector capability, we are actually using something like k nearest neighbor to find out, you know, how close things are. All right, let's try something a little bit more substantial. Okay, so let's use create some embedding. Okay, using the OpenAI. And we are going to test and have a look at 2 ways that we can measure the distance semantically, okay, between some sentences that we've got. So in this case, for example, again, you know, feel free to clear it and run it yourself, but it will prompt you for your OpenAI key, okay, in one step there. I've already pre-run this. But here we're using LineChain, okay? So as you can see, LineChain allows us to use this quite effectively and quite quickly without having to do a lot of work behind the scenes. We're essentially telling the system here that we're going to use OpenAI to look at the embeddings. And then we've got 3 sentences here that we are going to use, okay? So let's zoom in a bit. So this is from my earlier example. Remember, so sentence 1, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Sentence 2, I can see a fox jumping over a dog. Now, in our minds, obviously, we can recognize that, yep, you know, between these 2 sentences, there's quite a strong similarity simply because we are referencing jumping and dog and fox. And then the 3rd sentence is the weather is wet and cold outside. And again, we can recognize the fact that, well, that's quite distinct. That talks about a totally different topic. It's got nothing to do with dogs, foxes, or jumping. And so we can then ask the OpenAI to give us these embeddings. We make this query for each of these sentences. Here we store the values, okay? Embedding 1, embedding 2, embedding 3. So we're calling the OpenAI service to take those sentences and then kind of give us these embeddings. And if you want to have a look at what these embeddings look like, well, here we are. And then this is just showing the first 5 values for each of them, okay? They are much, much longer. If you remove this restriction here of just the 5, they'll just fill up the page. You know, it'll go on and on for quite a bit. Okay. And then we can use, remember, there's a couple of different ways that we can measure the distance. So dot product is a good one. Here, we're simply using this NumPy and then just saying, all right, compare this first embedding with the second one. Okay, so essentially looking at the first sentence with the second one. Higher is better, okay? So you can see that the value of 0.9, we're kind of approaching 1. That's a very strong kind of, you know, in terms of the similarity between those. That's good. Not so strong if we take a look just below and compare the first sentence with the third one. You can see that it's less, you know, down to 0.77 now. And then similarly, if we were to compare the second sentence with the third sentence, again, it's comparing those numerical values. Again, you can see it's down to 7.8. So intuitively, I mean, we know as human beings, we can kind of sense the fact that there are 2 sentences that are pretty similar, and then the third one is not so similar to the other one, and therefore we would expect it, you know, to be quite different. And so here, using these embeddings, we can actually get these values back and determine this in an actual way that the machine would understand. Okay, and this is useful to us. Now, the other way we could do it is this thing called Euclidean distance. So here we are similarly just creating a couple of arrays from these embeddings that have been returned by OpenAI. And then we're just asking it, what's the distance? So here, less is better, smaller is better, okay? So the distance between the first sentence and the second sentence here is the 0.43. Okay, and then here you can see that the distance between the first sentence and the third sentence much larger, it's further away. And then similarly with the second sentence and the third sentence, it's further away. Okay, not quite as far away as the one above, but again further away. So again, two different ways that we can kind of measure that distance. And that's very helpful for us. Okay, again, see from a semantic perspective, you know, what is similar to what. Yes, Emil.
Following this along, and unfortunately, it keeps throwing exceptions when we get to the embedding section.
Okay. Let me have a look. Let me see if I can assist you there. If I can see the exception, let me see what the error is.
Oh, was that TikTok in?
Yes.
Yeah, you need to load TikTok in the top one.
Yes. So you have to run right from the top. Did you run everything from the top?
Yeah, it's just not included.
Okay.
So where do we include it?
Just copy one of the lines and then.
So where it says import,
Yeah.
there's import TikTok.
Yeah.
It should work. It should work. The environment should. I think I'm surprised. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Something else I learned today. So brilliant.
Couldn't find that.
Okay, very helpful. The LineChain should take care of most of this. I mean, all of the dependencies should be loaded up as part of that. But again, thanks for that. All right. So,
do they need to enter the OpenAI key?
yes, your own. So, you know, if you want to run it yourself at that stage where it's prompting you, where it says OS environment OpenAI key equals get pass. The reason I've done it that way is that it's bad practice to put your OpenAI key in a notebook and then stick it on GitHub where everybody else can see it. So this way, it basically just prompts you, you put it in and that's fine. And as you can see, it's kind of blanked out for you as well, asterisks. So if you decide you want to share your notebook on GitHub, I think GitHub actually has a mechanism to check for this kind of thing anyway. It will stop you. It won't allow you to post something like that anyway. Okay, all right, so a little bit of prep work there for this. Let's have a look at something a little bit more substantial, even beyond that, right? So now we want to bring a database system into the mix, if you like. And so here, if you take a look here at number 3, in terms of iris vectors, so what we are literally doing here is we're now creating a table that allows us to store some vector data and a description as well. So we've got 2 fields, okay? We've got a blob, okay, which is being used here. Okay, let me just show you this. And we've got a varchar field for the species, okay? Now, the reason this works is that take a look down here. You can see that, of course, we've got 4 sets of values for each flower, okay? Sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. And so that in itself gives us an array of values, and it's consistent for all 150 rows, right? So now what we can do is simply using this mechanism here, JSON array pack, which is just an efficient way to store those vectors in the database system. We can say, all right, take these, store them in the database for me, okay? So it will do that. Okay. Bit of a cumbersome way to do it, but that's fine. I mean, it's just to show, you know, the data are more what we are interested in. And then just below here, we could actually take a look then. We run a SQL statement to say, all right, show me what you know. And so it returns and says, well, look, here's what the vector looks like. And here's the species. So that species is fine. The vector, as you can see, is just byte. Yeah, it's a byte sort of representation. we can actually ask it to kind of unpack that, if you like, and show us what the values were that went into it using this thing here, this JSON array unpack, okay, which I didn't use in the one above. And now you can see we get back the representation. Yep. So this is fine. Okay, and then on here, we can start running some queries, for example. So we could say, now, if you're sharp-eyed, you'll see that for this query one, the value that I'm using here, these numbers here, 5.9, 3, 5.1, 1.8 are the values for the very last row of what I actually input, just above here. Okay, so we're simply asking the system and saying, okay, find me the Euclidean distance between whatever you've stored, that entire 150 rows, and then compare it against this particular value. Show me, you know, does that actually exist in there? Return me what the species name is. And if you will see here that the query itself, if I just extend this a little bit here, I'm looking for this situation where this Euclidean distance is 0. Okay. Basically, I'm asking it, make a perfect match. Can you find something where this exists and it's literally, you know, sitting in this kind of space? And it says, yes, I found it. It is this Iris virginica. That is the flower, that species. Similarly here for this next SQL query, I could say, okay, rather than finding me an exact match, just show me, based upon these numbers that I've given you, show me the top 5, okay? And if it shows me the top 5, it does it. I've asked it to do it in sort of decreasing sort of order. So the best match is at the top. So the first value that it finds is a perfect match. And then it shows me the next 4 values, which are again close by. Okay. Yeah. And you can see that they are kind of increasing in value, and that they are all the same species. Okay. So again, measuring this kind of distance. For query 3, what I've done is I've just made something up. I've made up some numbers here, and I'm simply, these numbers here don't exist. It's just something I pulled off the top of my head, and I'm just asking it, okay, well, look, suppose I've got a hypothetical flower and it's got these characteristics. Can you find me the top 5 best matches for that? And it says, well, I think it's going to be Iris setosa. Based upon the data that you've given me, here are the top 5, and you can see that the topmost one, the lowest value, I mean, it's 0.14, okay? So whatever this thing is must be close to it using this Euclidean distance measure. And then the rest of them that are close by as well, the other sort of 4, they are the same species as well. So chances are pretty good it's going to be the same one, yeah? Even though it's just some numbers I pulled off the top of my head. And then similarly, I can just extend this a little bit further and say, all right, then rather than just doing the 5, just show me the best answer you've got. And so it just retrieves 1 there. All right, that's what's happening there. Okay, now for this, you'll see that if you run through and execute these, there's some kind of things called magic commands here. So this thing here, for example, is just telling the IPython environment that you're going to enter some SQL statements. Okay, so you're literally just connecting to the database system and executing that. All right, so with these 3 kind of simple notebooks, let's now put everything together, all of this stuff together, both in terms of this a nearest neighbor kind of thing, the fact that we've got these embeddings, and then that we can use things like Euclidean distance to find how close stuff is, or the alternative dot product. Okay, that's another way that we can use, and take a look at something pretty substantial. Okay, so this one here, this is notebook number 4. Okay, so in this one, again, we are going to use OpenAI, and we are going to use OpenAI in several ways. Okay, so we are going to use their embedding capability to return us these embeddings, and we are going to use ChatGPT as well. Okay, so we're going to ask ChatGPT a question. So if you execute this again, it will prompt you for your OpenAI key. And the first thing we'll do then, we're going to tell ChatGPT what is your role, and you are a helpful assistant. Okay, this is what your role is here. All right. And then the question we want to ask is, who won the gold medal in men's curling in the Winter Olympics in 2022? And so the answer it gives us just below there, and by the way, this will vary, okay? So if you run it, you might get something slightly different, but essentially the essence is the same. In my case, it says, I'm sorry, but I cannot provide real-time information as I don't have access to the internet. However, you can easily find the answer by searching online or checking the official Winter Olympics website. So basically, it doesn't know. Why? Because its training cutoff date was September 2021. Anything after that, it doesn't know about. It's the future as far as it's concerned. And therefore, it cannot give you an answer about something it doesn't know anything about. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach it, give it some information so that it learns. It has something now in addition. And so the way we can do that is that very helpfully, OpenAI have provided a file, okay, of the Wikipedia entry for the Winter 2022 Olympics that contains both the text and it contains the embeddings. In other words, they've already done the hard work for us. You don't have to spend money creating those embeddings. That's provided as part of the file. And so if we load that file in here, okay, it comes as a CSV file. And we can take a look at the structure of that file. Here you can see it's got 2 columns, okay? So I'm just showing it partially, okay? Because the text just really fills up the space. So that is the, various entries about the Olympics. And then you can see here these, the mathematical kind of representation of each of those pieces of text. And by the way, again, these are long. They go on and on and on, okay? If you want to show the full thing, you can do so. I mean, if you're interested in the numbers, but seriously, I mean, let the software handle that for you. There's nothing particularly interesting there. That is just for demonstrating what actually being returned there. So in this case, we don't have to connect to OpenAI to get these embeddings. As I said before, they are provided in that CSV file already for us. Loaded that CSV file, and then what we have done here, you can see here, it tells us there's 6,059 entries, okay? So the rows are numbered from 0 to 6058. So a little over 6,000 rows of data there, okay? And what we do here then is we simply create a table in SingleStore to store these embeddings, okay? Remember, this gives us the long-term memory, if you like, the ability to save this data. And then just as we did, similar to the previous example, we are just creating essentially 2 columns here. Let me use my arrow here. One for the text itself, and then one for the embedding. So we've got both of those stored in the database system, and it's a one-time operation. Yep. After that, all we simply do then is we store it. This is what this code is doing. It's batching it up, storing that into the database for us. The key observation here is that these steps here, okay, this will, you can run those and you can run those. What it will do once you reach this point here is that you just, if you want to execute this, you just need to select the database from this, from above here. Okay, as you can see, it's not currently there because I haven't executed this, but wait for that to run. And then before you execute this SQL Alchemy import star, essentially, you just, like I said, it's preview at the moment, okay? These things will get fixed, but you need to select the database from the pull down that you've just created above so that it can work properly just below.
What is it, Winter Wikipedia?
Yes, this one here, Ivo, that's right. So it's the Winter Wikipedia, okay? And so what if running that cell will mean that in a moment you would see from this pull down here that appearing on your list, okay? And it's not here, okay, because I haven't got that there, but you can see there's it's given me my TPCH there, that's done, and it's given me the information schema, which is just like metadata, okay, so that's fine. All right, so that's just one of the gotchas to be aware of. All right, so once that's all done, we've essentially stored the text and the embeddings into the database management system for the long term to give it its long-term memory. And now what we can do is we can ask a question. We can say, for example, that tell me everything you know about curling gold medals. Okay, this is the question that I'm now utilizing and comparing against the database. And the way that I am determining whether to return the answers, or essentially finding things that match as close as possible to that, is using dot product. Okay, so remember, Euclidean distance, dot product, two ways that we can do this. In this case, we are using dot product as a measure of determining something that is close to curling gold medals within that database that we now have. Okay, and then just asking it, give me the top 5 answers that you have here. And so what it does, it will return this in order, because that's the order that I've specified of, remember, with dot product, higher is better. So the top answer has a best value here, you can see, of 0.89, sorry, 0.879. That's the top answer, okay? And then just below it, we've actually got the text itself that matches that. So remember, there's 2 columns being stored. One is the embeddings, the other one is the text. So once we've done the dot product against the embeddings or the curling gold medals, we're pulling the text back and then just having a look at that. So this is the result there. But not only that, remember, we're returning the top 5. So just below here, you'll see that there are other answers as part of that. So the next best one here is try this one. See if I can get this one. No, it's still stuck on 0.87. Sorry about that, but you can see the next best one is 0.872, and so on. Okay. So all of these have something related to curling at the Winter Olympics. Okay, so it's done that kind of semantic match, if you like. Using all of this data that's been returned as part of this query that we've just now lodged against the database system, we give ChatGPT, we send this now to ChatGPT and say, look, here's some new stuff that you didn't know before. I'm going to share it with you, and we're going to ask you the same question. What do you think? And so this is what we're doing down here. So now we're saying, okay, same question. You are going to take this new information that we are sending to you, and you're going to ask you the same question. Who won the gold medal in the men's curling in the Winter Olympics 2022? And it says here, the team that won the gold medal was Sweden. Okay. So this is useful in the sense that if you think about it, what we've been able to do is to take a representation of the text. Fortunately, we have the embeddings already for us. It's not something we had to spend money doing. We can perform an operation upon the database in terms of looking for close matches to something that we're interested in, curling gold medal, for example. Once the results have been returned, we send them to ChatGPT and say, look, take this. This is new stuff. You didn't know this before. Use this information now to answer this question. We asked you previously about the gold medals, and now it's got something that it can analyze. And so this is improved its ability to answer that question. Previously, it didn't know anything. Now it knows something.
Question?
Yes.
The inputs to get your embeddings, were they exports of HTML from Wikipedia?
Yes, so if you look at the text that's coming out here, you can see bits of markup in some of these answers here.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm not sure how OpenAI originally did this, but as I said, they've very graciously provided this data set. Is one of a bunch of data sets that you provide just for experimentation and usage. And this is, you can see that there are, elements of markdown, markup, HTML contained within that code itself. Within the text itself. So it's interesting that it's been able to pick out the text that's relevant and kind of maybe ignore the markup, markdown. So that's a great question. I'll look into that again.
I think earlier on when you saw the input versus embedding, you could see.
Yes, let's just go back here. Yeah, that you can see there's all sorts of strange, /n, a couple of new lines.
If you expanded that, would that be an entire web page?
That's a great question. If you were to just expand it, I suspect it would probably be, yes, markdown, markup, HTML maybe. I'll try that out later. Have a look at that. You might have something that you could actually render if you wanted to. But yeah, great question. Thank you for that. Okay,
Related questions.
yes, Imo.
If it's possible to enhance the, what they call that, the corpus
Yes.
in this way.
Yeah.
What's to stop people just spamming it with rubbish?
Yes, so this is, I think, the great question. So the corpus, the whole idea is the quality of the corpus. And so you make a good point there. And I think this would be something that goes under whatever the corporate policy is within an organization. You have a group that is responsible for cleaning the data, ensuring consistency, meeting certain standards, so on and so on. That is something before it's actually loaded up and you create these embeddings from it. So you've got the quality threshold is reached and you do it at that time.
Now, what I mean is what we've just fed into there.
Yeah.
Is that shared by the world, or is it just our
No,
view of?
it's just for us.
Okay.
Okay. So remember, if you look in the up here, you actually are telling ChatGPT what is its role. It is being a helpful assistant. And so essentially, you're simply taking your problem and saying to ChatGPT, look, here's my problem. Here's a bunch of new things that you didn't know before. I'm going to share this with you. And that's private between me and you. Okay, it could be between your organization and ChatGPT. I mean, if you're sharing it with other colleagues, and then you're just asking it and giving it some context to say, look, I now want to ask you something about this. What do you think? Here's a question. Given this information, what's your opinion? Can you answer this? Give me some response back from this. And so that is something that, and I think Bard is different, if I understand correctly. Google constantly updates that all the time. Whereas with OpenAI, there are cutoff dates. Where, it's learned stuff up to a certain point, and then, I mean, it takes time to build these phenomenal amount of compute power to build these models. And so I think, that may get much better and much faster in the future. Yeah, you had a question.
Yeah. So is this quick to run?
Yes, it is.
All right. So if you changed your prompt to be, I am a helpful assistant,
Yes.
capable of removing markdown rubbish,
Yes.
would that actually remove it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the real challenge here, and by the way, if you're all looking for new jobs, become prompt engineers, right? That's the hot technology, and that you get awesome, $500,000 to $1 million salaries just for being that, all right? And so the skill here is, when I first started, if I could just give you the example, I was a newbie, right? I was terrible, didn't know how to ask ChatGPT the right questions. Understanding how to frame your question in such a way, giving it a role as to what it's supposed to do, and then giving it lots of information, refining that and being quite precise in terms of what you're looking for, and giving it the context to do that, means that the chances are the quality of information that it gives back to you, the answers it gives back to you are going to be much, much better. So you could potentially ask it, okay, I'm going to share all this markdown and markup for you. Please remove all of the tags from within this text and return me back an article. Or you could say, just summarize this article for me, removing all the markdown and markup from this, and then just show me what you got. And it can do that for you. I mean, it will go away. Yes, you pay a little bit for the privilege of doing so, but it could probably do that a lot faster than as a human being.
All right, thanks.
Yes, question.
To that question, Wikipedia already provides an API for that.
Yeah.
So you can do, give me a web page, give me dot summary, which is the top one, dot text.
Right.
It gives you everything already
Absolutely.
structured, because Wikipedia, most of the pages are already structured.
Okay, great. Brilliant.
I had another question.
Yes.
When you pass to OpenAPI, do you pass just the embeddings or the embeddings and the distances?
No, so remember the embeddings from the Wikipedia are stored in the database system already. And so the only embeddings the new stuff that we are generating is the responses to the top 5 answers that we got back. Okay, so the text from that. The prompt that we are actually asking ChatGPT, it needs to understand that. It has to have some context. So all of the rest of the stuff that we stored in the database doesn't go back to OpenAI again. It's only the new things that we're asking, and the new kind of context, if you like, or the semantic search that we're trying to perform, that little bit on top of that, that is what's going to OpenAI. to give it the ability to, answer the question for us.
So you just pass the nearest vectors.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the top 5 answers that you saw is what I'm sending to ChatGPT and saying, look, because those are the according to the Carling gold medal search that we previously performed using the product, those are the best answers. That is the new information we're saying, look, ChatGPT, here, take this stuff. This is some information about the Winter Olympics and gold medals and things like that. And now I'm going to ask you that question again, and you take that what I've just given you, use that as the basis for replying to this. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5. I mean, I just picked 5. It could be 1, for example. You might have or 2 or whatever. I think it just depends on how much information you want to give to the LLM in terms of what you want it to and there are things that you can control as well. There's a thing called a temperature as well. So essentially, it's the quality. Do you want a very deterministic answer every time, or are you a bit more flexible in terms of how it replies and what sort of answer you get back? So there are lots of parameters that you can tune. Okay. So we
from the background.
Yes.
Hi, I'm not familiar with ChatGPT, and I've been listening to you, and I'm struggling to see what extra value is brought by ChatGPT or Bard or whatever. Because a lot of this, you have SQL query and so on. Take away 3 years. How much of this could we got from non-ChatGPT's type mechanism?
Yeah, great question. Very difficult to answer. I think what this stuff brings to the table is that essentially I don't have to write SQL code anymore. Now, I've done some here, but it removes some of the burdens. LineChain, for example, abstracts away SQL altogether for you. You can now, as focus on business problem, prompt engineering, figuring out how to ask the intelligent questions and let the AI do the hard work. It becomes like a helpful assistant for you. And then we see this already in certain domains. So in the medical field, for example, something like this, for example, doctors already carry around devices that allow them to interrogate vast quantities of information in terms of, recording patient symptoms and things like that. So the doctor he or she may not have all the knowledge, but now the helpful assistant can say, well, look, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Based upon what we entered, the patient may be suffering from this condition, that condition. That's much more helpful. So something like this, I think, is going to be very, very useful going forward. Again, it takes away a lot of the drudgery and figuring out of how to write the SQL statements, what tables need to be joined, how to access the data. And then in this, we're simply framing the question in a way that is kind of convenient to us as human beings in just English. Say, well, look, what do you think of this? Your role is this. I'm going to ask you a question. What's your opinion? So I think that's where the real benefit comes in. And I think the other thing is, if you already look at technologies like Copilot, for example, or even if you are privileged to have access to GPT-4 from OpenAI, there is a technology that they now provide. Essentially, you can say to it's kind of like almost like an IDE. I mean, basically, you're giving it some information to say, here, take this code. It might be in Python. They say, right, write the equivalent in Swift, and I want all these other features, and I want a GUI, and I want this, and I want that. And basically, it just iterates and iterates and iterates until it gets the answer right. And it says, right, here, I've done it for you. I've built the code for you. So I think those kind of things are really going to be useful.
Normally, we would aim to finish it about this time. People seem to be really interested. I mean, should we just have a show of hands? Shall we go on for 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes. I've got 2 quick things to show you, and then I think we can wrap up, Yeah, brilliant. All right, great. All right, guys. So let's have a look at number 5 then, okay? So this is the LineChain one. And again, if you guys are having trouble with some of these imports, my apologies for that. I mean, you can see on all of these notebooks, I have actually run them because it tells you the time it was run and the duration. So I'm not sure why some of you are getting errors in terms of these libraries. It's exactly the same environment for all of us, but worth knowing. So for this LineChain one here, you can see again some imports there. Basically here, I'm just downloading and importing a PDF file. Remember, I mentioned this from New Leave It. So this is that same file from over 20 years ago that I presented, way back in 2001, whenever that was. The key thing to remember here is that in order to, if you want to do this yourself, if you try and download that file, you'll get an error. And so the reason for that is, can you see up the top here, as I mentioned before, the Workspace environment has a firewall, and so does this notebook environment. It also has a firewall, another one. And so if you just say edit firewall, okay, and it will show you, eventually, yeah, it will show you the different, here you can see that I've actually added this domain leavecom.com to my list as something that it's allowed to go out and access. Okay. And here you can see the fully qualified domain names allow list on the right hand side. So for example, I mean, things like Amazon, GitHub, few of those, GitLab, they're already, OpenAI, they're already in there for you. You don't have to worry about those, but a few others are, you need to add. And so here, LineChain, basically, I grab this PDF file, I simply use its text splitter to extract the text content, chunk it up, okay, divide it up into smaller parts, store that in the database, and then I also get these embeddings for those chunks. Okay, so remember that diagram I showed you? You have that in your PDF slides as well, the kind of architectural sort of pattern, and then we literally just ask it. So you can see here where it says S2 password and S2 host here. Okay, so all you need to do is, and I'll show you where to get this. So if you go back to your your group one, if you kept the defaults, you go back here. Okay. All right, and have a look at the workspace here. Okay, you see there's a pull down, it says connect, just here. Okay, so if you pull that down, you'll see one of the options says connect directly. You select that, here you get the connection details. So the very first time you see this, by default, it's created a password for you. You can change that if you like, or you can keep that. All right, so that's the password. You can just copy that from there. Okay, so we can copy that and we can paste that here. Okay, just do that like so. And then in terms of the actual workspace, you can see here just below, you've got a couple of options here. Okay. And so on, from various types of tools that you might want to use. So any one of these, I think SQL ID, for example, is fine. You'll see that you've got the details of the host here. Because we're using Amazon Web Services, that's the host address that we've got, okay, for our particular workspace. So be careful of the copy button on the extreme right. It will copy everything there, including the port, the username. It'll just mess things up. So easiest thing to do is just take this and just copy that. Make sure you don't miss any bits off there. I made a few mistakes recently where the S at the beginning was omitted, and I was trying to figure out why it wasn't connecting, and it's simply because this thing was missing here. Yes, I'd copied from the VC onwards. Okay, so that's all you need. Okay, so from your workspace environment, you just need that. And so here, if you see, literally, LineChain is then taking the chunks, restoring those. It's also creating the table for us. We don't need to know. Notice that there's no SQL code used here. It's storing the embeddings for us as well, because we've called the embeddings just up here. Okay, embedding equals OpenAI embeddings. And then we can ask a question. And the question is, will object-oriented databases be commercially successful? Okay, well, of course, we know what the answer is, right? You could ask something harder, right? But based upon that, then we do a search of what we have stored in the database system, and it goes away and pulls out what it thinks is the most relevant part. And I like this because this article references two of my favorite people, Mike Stonebreaker, who was my boss, and Rick Patel, who was a distinguished engineer at Sun, who worked on things like JDBC and object OODBs and standards in OODBs a long time ago. So it's pulled out this one section here, which appears to be the most relevant as far as my question is concerned. And then taking that as kind of context, I'm sending that across to ChatGPT. Okay, giving it this information, and then I'm asking and then saying, well, your role is, again, is a helpful assistant. You're going to help me, okay? I'm going to give you some new information that you didn't know, maybe you knew about this, okay? Because remember, this is from a long time ago, possibly, and I should test this really, perhaps its knowledge base already has this article as part of it, but you could potentially give it something today that isn't part of that. And then I just ask it the question, what do you think? Are they going to be successful? And it says, well, okay, based upon that document that you've just given me and this question that you've asked me, it's not clear, okay? Some believe OODBs are niche. Others think that, that the world is, perhaps it'll take time. Others think that they are a waste of time, which is actually what Mike's opinion was. So, right, you can customize this for yourselves, okay? Think about an example where you might want to summarize something in this way, or you're storing something from a document, for example. Again, please be careful. It's important that you realize that you are sending information across to a third party in order to get these embeddings and all this other stuff. And therefore, this contains nothing sensitive. Absolutely fine. So that's worth thinking about. And then let me just quickly show you the very last example again, which is worth showing. So there is a mechanism. So this is what the TPCH was all about, why I wanted you to load that, because this allows you to interrogate your database, your SQL database. I think kind of goes back to the question you were asking, sir, that you can now ask the question in English. So what I've done here is, again, just put your connection details in. And so I'm asking this and saying to the system, write a single store query that shows the highest paying customers per country, include how much they've spent, use the nation name. So it goes away, looks at the schema, it interrogates it, and here it shows you its thinking process, okay? It tells you what it's actually doing. It's the steps that it's taking in order to answer that question. And you can see it's thinking very carefully what its observation is, what's the information it's found, and then what's the next step it's going to do, okay? And so right down at the bottom here, you can see finally it comes and says, I now know the final answer. And then it gives you, it says the chain is finished, okay? So the LineChain is given, utilizing this and connecting to OpenAI, we've actually got an answer back to tell us what is that. So that is in plain English. I didn't have to ask it in SQL. Obviously, it interrogates the schema, figures stuff out for it. If I give it enough details and the names match the names of the schema, it's got enough information to be able to go away and be able to do that. And that's pretty cool. Very last thing, if you want to see an example of a chatbot that we've actually built internally within SingleStore using OpenAI, it's this thing here. It's right staring you in the face, code with squirrel, okay? So you can just enable that. There you go. And what you can then do is you can ask it questions here. You can say, how do I write an SQL statement to query the, maybe something like this, say TPCH database. Let's see if it gives us anything. So what it will do, because this is based upon our knowledge base, our forums, our documentation, all of the things that relate to SingleStore. If there's something specific, for example, maybe I want to ask it something about the particular syntax of SingleStore, for example, the difference between it and MySQL or something like that. So a little bit slow there. Sorry about that. There we go. So it's now given me the code that I need in order to generate that. There we go. So that's the chatbot that we've built internally, using a lot of the concepts and ideas that we've talked about today. And the code for something like this, I mean, just this past week, I think you attended one of the webinars this week, but yesterday's one was awesome because my colleague David Lee, he did a presentation where essentially he is talking to the database system. He is asking questions in English, spoken English. That is going to OpenAI. It's using their software to convert it into text, and then coming back, and then we're doing other things with it in terms of the embeddings, and then it's going away, figuring out answers. No SQL code required whatsoever. Now you're asking it in English. It's becoming more lazy, right? So first we're just doing stuff in English. Now we can just talk to the system and say, all right, go away and do this for me now. And it will just figure out the best way to do it. Would I rely upon this to save my life? No, because I don't think it's ready. All right. As good as this stuff is and as cool as it is, and I'm sure it's going to solve a lot of business problems, I think there's safeguards need to be built in. I think there's things that worry us about our privacy, all sorts of, I mean, there are things that are built into it currently. So for example, if you ask ChatGPT, give me a way to end the human race, using such and such technology, it will say, sorry, I can't do that. It's against my ethics, which is great. So you can't ask it dangerous things, but the stuff, really dangerous things, okay? But the thing is, there is other stuff that, like I said, it's not perfect by any means. It makes mistakes. It kind of joins the dots where sometimes those dots should not be joined. It gives you answers that are wrong. But be aware of that. But you can see, hopefully, the little bit that we've scratched today, that yes, this could be useful. It could help with some problems. It could be great for some types of applications, helpful assistant. As this stuff improves over the next few years, 5 years maybe, you'll see, I think it's going to make a really big difference to all of us. I'd be glad for the day when I don't have to write any code. I can just speak and say, all right, here's my problem. Go on and do this. I won't need to do that. This is what the GUI must look like. Have input boxes for this, that, and the other, and it just go away and generate everything for me. And so this is why I said, become prompt engineers, understand how to do this, because that's where the money is, okay? Traditional software engineering, I think, is really due for a big shakeup. I think the likes of you and me will be long retired by that time, perhaps. But anyway, all right, guys, I hope that was helpful, okay? You have all the notebooks, you've got the environment. The only thing that you need to be a little bit careful of is just the OpenAI, right? Like I said, the cost of running all the stuff that we've done on OpenAI has come down dramatically over the last couple of months. So all of this stuff literally would be pennies, a couple of cents worth. And that is, a great way to experiment, to try it out. And again, if you have any questions, just reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, okay? And Twitter, Medium as well, is where I tend to write a lot of blog posts about this stuff. Dev.to as well, dzone, you can find me in all these places. And again, thank you for your time and for your attention, for your patience as well. Any errors or problems, okay, we have, I think, a few minutes, quick, I'll note those down, okay, take that feedback back to engineering. So I'll report these issues to them so we can try and get those fixed for next time. And again, thank you for your time and for your attention. I hope it's been useful. Certainly, I feel very privileged again, and great pleasure to be here for the BCS once again. Thank you. Oh, lots of stuff. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you what we're doing on September the 6th at SPA. At the moment, no speaker has come forward. I'm always open to suggestions, presentation sessions, topics. If you've got, I should ask ChatGPT.
Oh yeah.
There should now be some food and drink in the concourse. What were you going to say, darling? Say a word.
Yeah, if I could, please. Hi, I thought that was excellent, and thank you very much for being a helpful assistant to ChatGPT. But my name is Dalim. I'm chairman of North, South, and Central London branches of the BCS, and I'd just like to give you a spot of information. Following on from what Imo has said, I don't know what SPA is going to do on the 6th of September either, but no doubt Akmal will work on it. What I do know is that on the 9th of September, we have another session on AI at a much higher level by a much different speaker. And that is a lady called Sarah, who's the chief something officer at Microsoft.
9th of August. Sarah Armstrong-Smith, 9th of August.
She is the chief security advisor for Microsoft. So that will be here as well. Do come if you can, September 9th. But I just want to ask you.
September, August.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's August.
yeah, next week.
We're in August, I'm on holiday. Let's try next week, August the 9th. So if you're thinking September and relaxing, don't, it's August the 9th, it's next week. So do come if you can. But I also want to ask you another question about something that's hot off the press. Do you live in South London? Who lives in South London? Okay, great. 3-4 people, excellent. Because what we're doing is we're doing something at Croydon College, which I've never been to, but I believe is firmly in South London near East Croydon Station, 5 minutes walk. And there on August 19th to 20th, which is Saturday and Sunday, they are going to have a Black Tech Day. And that is on the 4 floors of Croydon College. So all of those floors are going to be buzzing with activity because it says here, across 4 floors of the college, Black Tech Day 23 promises a weekend packed with entertainment, education, and opportunities, with gamers, influencers, and educators all under one roof. Conversations at the event will explore the interoperability between Web 2 and Web 3, unveiling pathways for youth engagement in coding, maybe ChatGPT, I'm not sure, Game FI or Game F1, I don't know, cybersecurity and blockchain and Web3 again, and raising awareness about cutting edge technologies, maybe prompt engineering, such as AR, AI, and VR, all alongside financial education to help families to work on the links and interactions that they need with educational providers and industry experts. And the final bit I'll read to you from here is we have a wide range of over 40 guest speakers, which I think is now 48, not including me, you'll be pleased to hear, giving talks and tips to attendees over the weekend and taking part in various panels. There will also be multiple workshops available for attendees. Are you running one of those?
I've been invited.
Excellent. So, you see, you might indeed see Akmal again. And that's available for attendees to get hands-on with tech and learn about the skills involved across different roles in the sector. To me, it all sounds excellent. I'm waiting for final information. I do know that they have an entry fee per day of £10. So, you know, it might be £20 for the 2 days or less. I think it all sounds excellent to me. As soon as we have the details, and I'm expecting to receive those this weekend, we'll get it out across North, South, Central London branches. So keep that in mind as well. August 19th to 20th.
Thank you. And just to point out, you don't have to live in South London to get there because the Thameslink train runs from north to south. Very, very quick. So thanks, everybody.